The perfect crime, or the perfect cover-up. Imagine this: a man, an ex-cop who knows how to manipulate the system, stage a crime scene, and walk away scot-free, twice. First, he orchestrates his wife's murder and convinces everyone it was a tragic home invasion gone wrong. Years later, his next wife disappears without a trace. Coincidence? Or is this man a cold-blooded killer with a twisted pattern of eliminating his wives to cover up his own dark secrets? Welcome to a case that shocked a community, fooled an entire police department, and left 2 women dead or missing. This is the story of an ex-cop who staged his wife's murder and then got away with it until his second wife vanished. The man behind the crime. David Temple wasn't just any ordinary man. He was a former police officer, trained to understand how investigations work, how to manipulate evidence, and how to lie without giving anything away. By all appearances, he was a respectable member of society, a man who had served his community, raised children, and even earned the trust of his colleagues. But underneath that polished exterior lay a man with a sinister side, a man who thought he could outsmart the system and get away with murder. In 1995, David's first wife, Betty Temple, was found dead in their suburban Houston home, the victim of what initially appeared to be a brutal home invasion. The police were baffled. There was no sign of forced entry, no obvious motive, and yet Betty was dead. It seemed like a random act of violence, a crime of opportunity. But David's calm demeanor and quick explanations made everyone think it was just an unfortunate case. But the more the police dug into David's past, the more disturbing things started to surface. It wasn't long before they began to wonder, was this a carefully staged murder, or was David truly the victim of an unexpected tragedy? Betty Temple's death. Betty Temple's death was initially seen as a home invasion gone wrong. The crime scene was gruesome, a bloody mess that suggested someone had violently attacked her, leaving her unrecognizable. The scene appeared to fit a common narrative of break-ins gone awry, and the police investigation followed this theory. David Temple, in his grief, described a terrifying scenario. He claimed that he had been asleep when the intruder broke in, and that he had come downstairs to find his wife already on the floor, blood pouring from her wounds. His story was tragic, and many people bought into it, including the police. However, as the investigation progressed, things didn't add up. No forced entry was found on the doors or windows. There was no sign of a struggle, and the most glaring red flag, the way David reacted. He appeared remarkably calm for someone who had just discovered his wife's brutal murder. He didn't seem shocked, devastated, or even particularly concerned. His demeanor was eerily composed. As the investigation continued, David's story began to unravel. His knowledge of police procedures, his calm demeanor, and the fact that he was a former officer began to cast a shadow over his account. Was he covering up a much darker truth? The investigation. The investigation into Betty's death began to raise more questions than answers. The police started to re-examine the evidence at the crime scene, and the inconsistencies were hard to ignore. First, there was the fact that the home invasion theory didn't make sense. If someone had broken into the house, why wasn't there any evidence of a struggle? The doors and windows were intact. There were no signs of forced entry. And more importantly, no valuables appeared to have been stolen. As the police delved deeper into David Temple's life, they discovered something chilling: a history of questionable behavior and possible motives. In the years leading up to Betty's death, David had taken out life insurance policies on his wife, a move that was beginning to look more like a premeditated plot than an unfortunate tragedy. David Temple was eventually arrested for his wife's murder, but his trial would be far from simple. He had been an ex-cop after all, and he knew how to manipulate evidence, cover his tracks, and play the system. But the more the investigation uncovered, the clearer it became that he was not the innocent victim he appeared to be. The case goes cold. Despite mounting evidence, David Temple's trial was not an easy one. There were too many pieces of evidence that suggested he had staged the crime scene. But without a clear motive or direct evidence tying him to the murder, prosecutors struggled to make their case. The trial was drawn out over several years, with twists and turns that kept both the public and law enforcement on edge. But despite all the circumstantial evidence, David was acquitted in 1997. His acquittal shocked everyone. The case against him had seemed so airtight, yet he walked free. Many people believed that his training as a former cop had given him an advantage in the investigation, allowing him to manipulate the evidence and avoid conviction. But as the years passed, people moved on, and the case began to grow cold. Betty Temple's death remained unsolved, with David Temple continuing to live his life, unpunished and freed from the consequences of his actions. But this wasn't the end of David's story. In fact, it was only the beginning. The next wife's mysterious disappearance. After the trial and his acquittal, David Temple's life seemed to return to normal. He eventually remarried, this time to a woman named Shirley. Their relationship seemed to be going well, at least from the outside. But when David's second wife, Shirley, went missing under strange circumstances in 2003, many people began to suspect that his past may have caught up with him. Shirley's disappearance was shrouded in mystery. She was last seen in their home one evening, and the next morning, she was gone without a trace. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication of foul play, and no evidence to explain where she had gone. David's story about Shirley's disappearance mirrored his earlier account of Betty's death. He claimed she had simply vanished without warning, leaving behind no clues. But this time, people weren't so quick to believe him. Given his history, many wondered if Shirley had suffered the same fate as his first wife. Was this another carefully orchestrated disappearance, or had Shirley simply left him? The police were cautious but persistent in their investigation, but David's calm demeanor and lack of emotional response made them question whether he was hiding something. Just like Betty's case, Shirley's disappearance became another strange chapter in the life of David Temple. The search for Shirley. The search for Shirley Temple was intense. Friends, family, and even local law enforcement launched a massive effort to find her. They scoured the neighborhood, checked local hospitals, and questioned anyone who might have seen or heard something. But there was no sign of her anywhere. David Temple's story remained the same. He insisted that Shirley had simply disappeared without a trace. But as the days passed and the investigation continued, new evidence began to surface that made authorities suspect foul play. Neighbors recalled hearing strange noises coming from David's home the night Shirley disappeared. And more disturbing, some witnesses claimed to have seen David acting unusually calm in the hours after she was last seen. As time went on, the mystery deepened. Shirley's disappearance remained unsolved, but the strange circumstances surrounding her vanishing, combined with David's checkered past, made investigators more determined than ever to find the truth. Was David responsible for her disappearance, or was there something else at play here? The investigation would eventually reveal some shocking truths, but the answers would come at a high cost. The truth unravels. After years of suspicion, the investigation into Shirley Temple's disappearance took an unexpected turn in 2010. A breakthrough in the case revealed that David Temple's actions following his second wife's disappearance were far more suspicious than originally believed. Authorities uncovered evidence that pointed to David's involvement in staging yet another crime scene. It wasn't just his calm demeanor that made him look guilty. It was the strange patterns in his behavior and the conflicting stories he told. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that David had been involved in a series of financial transactions that seemed to indicate premeditated planning. He had taken out another life insurance policy on Shirley, just like he had done with Betty. The evidence pointed to one unsettling conclusion. David Temple had once again staged a disappearance, and this time, it wasn't just a murder. It was a pattern of manipulation, lies, and a desperate need for control. The truth was horrifying, but it was clear now. David Temple had not only staged his first wife's murder, but he had also orchestrated his second wife's disappearance. What do you think of this case? Was David Temple a mastermind criminal, or just a man who got away with murder twice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more real-life mysteries, true crime stories, and chilling cases that defy explanation. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and always question the truth.